Hey everyone, I'm Adam Orth from Digital Eclipse LA, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today I'm speaking with BattleBit Remastered developer Max Fink, sometimes known as Larry to the BattleBit community. In our conversation today, we're going to cover his unique journey from modding to game development, what it's like being in the eye of the storm of massive success and popularity, the unique design choices that go into creating BattleBit, and his very simple advice for anyone starting out making games. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about BattleBit Remastered, and I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. I love the game, and I love how you guys are kind of like almost kind of disrupting the industry in a way, um, based purely on what I can see and what I know of as your pure love of a game and not making a game to make a game, but making a game to play something that you guys love to play. The story of two or three guys making a game like this and having such a huge impact on Steam and the game industry. I can tell you that all the developers in the video game industry are watching you guys closely, and many of them, including myself, are jealous of the kind of freedom that you've created for yourself by making this game. And it's such a fascinating story. Um, I've read a lot about you guys, and I've played the game a lot, and I'm super impressed with everything. I've been making games for 25 years, and seeing something like this, it feels like a really big sea change that I think people are definitely taking notice of. And there's a lot to dig in about this. And we have a lot of time to talk about it today. So, can you just give me a little bit of background on yourself? How you guys came together, why you started making this game, and then we can kind of dig into all the challenges of learning game development and making a massive multiplayer online shooter that is incredible. Like, as a first game, it's like, how did this happen? Everyone's interested. Everyone wants to hear from you. It's great to talk to you today.
Right. Thanks a lot. An honor to be here. Not my first podcast, so slowly getting used to it. We started one in the meantime ourselves, just to connect with our community better and more. But it's been a very interesting ride and far, far away from the professional side. So I definitely admire you there. 25 years in game development experience is definitely crazy. For someone like me, I didn't even made it to university because I was too bad for them. Yeah, it's like it. I don't even really know how it started. We just made a thing we always wanted to have, and that is was at any point was the core idea of BattleBit. Hey, there's like this game, uh, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Squad, whatever, and they deliver so cool experiences. And when the project more or less started in 2016, it was like always, hey, they can do all these cool things, but we can't run them because our hardware is too bad. So why don't we just make that thing, but on low end hardware? And that is originally where BattleBit started, and it's somewhere still true to this day. Okay, we went from having a game accessible to everyone to having a game accessible for everyone, if that makes sense.
Totally.
And yeah, that is to this day the core thought. And as you already said, but we'll get into it later, there is a lot of challenges regarding this. Rolling back to your experience, you know a lot of the its and bits of game development. For us, it was all new. No one of us even has a professional background in any field that is remotely close to game development.
I mean, I think I'll say right off the bat, I think that's probably a huge plus uh, in your favor, and it shows in a positive way in the game because um, you don't have the kind of baggage that comes with making games for a huge amount of time. You're coming straight into it with the excitement and the joy of being a gamer and wanting something that you're not getting and saying, you know what, let's just make it. Like that in itself is the most amazing kind of game development story ever told. It's really remarkable how far you guys have come in the 7 years that you've been working on the game, and it just came out in early access in June. Can you talk a little bit about where you guys are at right now in terms of like, I mean, you're literally in the eye of the hurricane right now. Like, what does that feel like?
Um, to be very honest, no one of us has really realized it. I think that's the best way. For us, it's just business as usual. We're like, wake up, we sit at our PC and just do the things we did before. It's like exactly like the 2 years before the release, when the game like initially got a little blow up when we went to the Steam playtesting. So for us, yeah, it's more crazy. We get like more and more requests daily. Before you get like one email in a week, now you got like 20 emails a day of various people that want to do something, want to collaborate, but we are still more or less just true to ourselves. We just check what our community wants, what we want, and then just focus that week on what we want to do with like the past week been getting. Because we came from like running a playtest thing every weekend. So we did changes during the week, and then on the weekend we tested it. And that is basically our philosophy still to this day. We just work through the week, we publish an update on the weekend, we see how it goes, and then we go back to working during the week. And it's like a never ending cycle. It took some time to adjust back into it now, especially because the release, thinking back to it, I think that was the longest days I ever had when 2 days became one continuously. um, with as fun as me and Oki, we had more or less a race going on internally on release day of who could stay awake longer. I made it to 48 hours. He made it to 50. It was an interesting time, especially if you, after you being awake for 48 hours, if you wake up again after 5 hours and just do the same thing again.
Yeah, it's not really like that anymore, but early in my career, I definitely did that. I definitely had a sleeping bag under my desk. I definitely stayed up more hours than seemed humanly possible out of the pure um, excitement and passion of making games. And I think that's very evident in what you guys do. And what you're describing in terms of your kind of workflow of working through the week, publishing on the weekend, listening to the community, and then kind of addressing that and moving forward. And that pattern, um, surely you must be aware that no game companies can really do that. It's you're in a unique situation where you have a massive audience and you haven't really changed the kind of core system of how you make the game. And it's remarkable how you guys are still able to keep that going with the scope and scale, just the scope and scale of the game itself, but now the audience and all the attention that you guys have. Um, it's it's what everyone who makes games wants to have, and hearing how you guys started and are making the game and are continuing to support it is a huge learning lesson for everyone who's going to listen to your interviews and be part of your community and watch this. um, you really have an enviable position to disrupt the industry in a way where um, it feels like it's not a business model based. It's based on the love of video games, and that's just so pure. And we need more of that. So totally commendable to you guys to sticking to your guns on that. And I hope you always do that.
Yeah, it's a full-on passion project. There was never any idea to make any money with the game, and I think it's pretty evident with the game. Don't have any season pass. We don't have like microtransactions or something. I have something planned that goes in the direction of microtransactions, but it's like not the casual way of microtransactions. Um, I'll just go right ahead. It's basically what we will do now because it's just a nice thing to do. I'm working with Make a Wish, the charity. So, and we make a skin for the game, and they sell it on their platform. It's somewhat a microtransactions, but we don't make any money with it. It's just for charity. So, and that is kind of where I wanted to go anyway at all the time. Hey, if we do some cool things, like, or do some things you can buy for the game, then let's make them cool at least. So, and that's why I was like, hey, we could just like, because we have that huge audience, we could connect like two dots here and like have people buy their things because people are asking for it. It's really weird. Have them buy their things, but don't lose your value and not doing microtransactions just for money to go into your pockets. If you make money with this, make it count. And I think with Make a Wish, we have someone that can make that money count.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it speaks to it's not surprising to hear that, and it speaks to kind of everything that we know about how you guys operate. And it's just another check in the box of like, wow, these guys are doing everything right. So let me rewind a little bit. So tell me, let's go back to the real genesis and the origin of the project. It's 2016, maybe a little bit before. Kind of unsure on the timeline there. You're you guys are playing. Excuse me. You guys are playing the games that you love, but you're not getting what you want out of these games. And from what I understand, that's the seed of how this started. So take me there and walk me through that.
So, yeah, pretty much that is where that started. It started more or less with the release of Squad, which should have been in the early access version. It should be in 2016, somewhere around the time. It originally started actually with only Oki and Velasquez. I am not like the original founder of it. I joined 1 year later to the team. And yeah, they had both really low end hardware. They are from Turkey and Belarus, and their places are not really known for like high income and really great things, great systems people are running. So that is basically where it all started, and they just started working on this. Actually released the game somewhat already back then in 2016, but it was extremely hardcore. Um, and there was not really an audience for a low poly game that is extremely hardcore, higher level than Squad or Insurgency or something. And that is where they went back to the drawing board and restarted the project. That is why the game is called BattleBit Remastered. It's funny that there's a remastered version of a game that never released, somewhat. um, and that is where that started. And with going the remaster route, I joined the project, and sometime later, as just a 3D artist on my contract, a freelance thing, to make some vehicles for the project. That is where we met. This is how we worked for a while until I was like, okay, hey, I'm here all the time now. We are basically friends already. Let me actually join a team. You don't pay me for the things we do now. Let me just join a team, and I want to go through with this and help you make the game. And that was 6 years ago now.
Were you active in the modding community before you got into onto the team?
Yeah, in fact, I was. I still give some advice to some friends regarding visuals because I'm the artist at the project. But I like my actual modeling journey with just doing 3D modeling started in school on like a school project in sixth class, like somewhere when I was around 14. Um, yeah, and I was just doing that, and then I like, hey, I can like do the 3D things now because I did a school project. Then I tried my own games, failed miserably at it, didn't even get somewhere. But I was like, hey, I like these art things. Maybe there's like a field close to what I like doing. So, and then is where I got into modding. And I originally started with like Skyrim, went to Fallout 4 when that released, went to Fallout New Vegas after because Fallout 4 was just a pain. Like a game that just released, having it moddable was just a pain to do. So I went back to a platform that was similar to what I did before. I did some City Skylines because I really loved the game at some point. I did Ravenfield. It's like another low poly FPS game, but only against bots. There's no there's a multiplayer community project, but no real multiplayer. And then through Ravenfield, then found BattleBit. And yeah, I come from like a high poly, high end background of making realistic things, and then went to low poly because I just liked the challenge. And it's pretty much where I really found what I love doing is just doing the absolute minimum in triangles, but yet delivering somewhat a stunning visual style.
Well, there's a lot of creativity and limitations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and the other guys were active in the modding community as well.
Yeah. So Velasquez is still active in the modding community. He made mods for Unturned before. Okay, always he was doing animations and modeling way before, like even before BattleBit, but since BattleBit became a thing, he only did ever BattleBit. He he had a contracted job as a network engineer at some point, but that was like during the time BattleBit, and he only took that job just to found BattleBit or fund BattleBit, not
Interesting.
found. So Velasquez the same thing. Me the same thing. I actually next to what we're doing right now, I still have my 9 to 5. I actually was at work this morning.
That is mind blowing, my dude. That is crazy.
So
You
yeah,
guys are essentially living the dream and still working your jobs and doing this, you know,
y-
on nights and weekends.
yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So modding was obviously a huge gateway for you guys into starting to learn about game development. Um, Talk a little bit about how the experience, and especially in your case of jumping around to so many different platforms and games, modding, how that kind of supercharged the the idea about we're going to make this game. We don't have any professional game development experience, and this experience that we have modding is going to be the foundation for how we learn game development.
So funnily enough, it didn't help a lot. It definitely helped me in my first years understand, okay, how do you actually model? How do you get a somewhat efficient workflow when doing things and not deleting things over and over? I still do it to this day, so I didn't find an efficient workflow yet. But I think that's just usual if you're doing art. And what really helped in the end, and that's like somewhat incredible, is like the game development podcasts, the GDC Vault, and everything. All that is there because in what we are doing right now, especially with the size we're running, we're running 250 players in a single server in a Battlefield style game. There was one single game ever out there that did the same style. It was like Mag, and it released in 2013 and only in Australia. So we here in the EU, we don't even know the game. We haven't even seen the game until like 2 years ago. We didn't even know about its existence. So everything we learned was more or less just trial and error. We were never too afraid to fuck around. We still do it today with our community. We say like, hey, we do this for this week. If it is bad, like end of the week, we'll do a feedback thing. If it's bad, then it's out with the update again. So, and that's like, we are not afraid to go out and say like, hey, we do bad things and we did it this way and it's like extremely horrible. I just basically do it all day long because people like point out mistakes in my models and everything or mistakes in the game design. So that is where we stand. We just say, hey, okay, we don't have to hide besides some corporate notice. And if I ever want to say something public that I need like an approval and it has to go through this and this and this and this, if I want to say something, I just say something.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the freedom that you guys have that you know you can never have at a big AAA game company or any game developer that's a publicly traded company or has any kind of corporate ambition because there's a lot of people to have to answer to do things like that. I've I've been in that situation most of my career, and there's a lot of push and pull on a AAA team from people who want to be creative and break the mold and um, have to kind of do that within a certain um, guidelines, right? There's only so much you can go outside of the box, so to speak, on a big game, and a lot of the stuff that I've learned about you guys is it seems so obvious. Like for example, the hey, we're just going to develop a weapon and show everyone how we do it, and everyone's kind of from the community is involved, and then when it's done, we're going to put it out, and you can tell us how you like it, and that kind of freedom to bring the community who are playing your game into the almost process of game development is something that wasn't possible before, really, without things like Discord and the ways we can communicate with our audience. So, seeing that process and knowing that you guys are really how transparency is really important for you guys. Um, that's such a huge plus for game development. Being able to be super in touch with your community at any given time, and obviously, the more you put into the community, the more you're going to get back. So like, how does that work for you guys? The concept of transparency and openness and involving your community in the development of this game.
So we split them in multiple things. What we can show, what we shouldn't show, and what we basically can't show. So we can't show anything regarding to safety, user information, even though it's just like a name and their stats, it's still like user information. That's something you can't show because like everyone in the EU will just try to murder you if you do that. Because like all the regulations that exist out there. But there's some things, safety regarded systems, gameplay regarded systems. There's like things you shouldn't show, and then you can go down to things you can show. For example, if you now work on a new game mode, let's say we have to code an objective and have to make the whole UI and everything. Why shouldn't you show that? Why shouldn't you be able to show that? It's just some pixels on a screen, more or less. It's like, hey, we do like this design, and it's like really nice sitting there with your community. Um, in my case, even I do Twitch streams making my weapons, and I just sit there and say like, hey, how do you guys like this and this? And even going that step that where I have like, because Twitch has polls, I say like, okay, we did this and this way now, and this weapon, for example, is modifiable, and it's like these and these aftermarket parts, and they are like all look cool. What do you actually want to have? And then now just run a poll, and the community decides what the community will get. And that is like, that is the beauty of it, because like everyone is involved. My streams get massive amount of viewers because people just want to see me sit there for 8 hours and just suffer through the whole process. And yeah, like trying to get every single little itty bitty detail right. And for the modelers, and for the artists that sit here, it's like what we do is like with everything you do, you have always in the back of your minds. This might be like, you can do like this thing very detailed, and someone will see this and it will look really cool. But the problem is always you will not have like maybe 16 versus 16 players, and you have like basically no performance issues at all at that small rate. We will have 250 players, and if they're all on that one point and they all play with that weapon, some triangles make a huge difference, especially because the game is specifically made for low end. And that guides all our decisions. Yes, it restricts us in a lot of things, but it opens so much space for creativity where we can say, okay, we can, for the next 3 weeks, just try to get that thing right and have it performant. And if we do it and get it out there, it's perfect because everyone can just be there and use it.
I mean, it's interesting, how you bring up we've referenced the kind of creativity within limitations a couple times now, and you're making the game to run well on low spec machines, and it kind of talks to like a bigger concept of you guys are having a huge impact in the world right now through your game, and your game is made out of love and necessity, right? The necessity of how you build your game to meet the kind of core idea and the specs. It's like you're basically creating in a way that suits your creativity. It's kind of like, I'm going to go in a weird direction here for a second, but the guitarist Eddie Van Halen from Van Halen, or Brian May from Queen. You may or may not know these guys, but they're huge innovators in the world of music. And one of the things that both those guys have in common is they had all this creativity and ideas coming out of them, but um, they couldn't pick up instruments off the shelf and use them to express themselves. They had to essentially build their own guitars to express their music and have their music come out in the right way. They had to build their own tools and do it their own way in order to create what you will later hear on the radio and all the albums that they made. And I see a real similarity with what you guys are doing here, because you could very easily just go use Unreal Engine or Unity and make super high polished, game visually, but it wouldn't be the game that you want to make and that's in your heart. And I find that really interesting that you guys have really honed in to the idea and are super true to your creative compass.
It's basically, so I work in engineering in my daytime job. As basically as we say it, it's form follows function. function is the most important thing. We can later talk about like how we have it the most visual appearing after it works. That is the whole guideline for it. Just have form follow function. If the function is perfect, then the form will adjust to it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. When you guys were first starting out making this game, Minecraft was definitely already chugging along, definitely a huge thing at that point. Um, it's interesting to see how far back you guys started with that and how it's basically en vogue already today. You know, like you look at the popularity of Roblox, for example, um, and it's almost like you guys kind of just hit this nexus point with all this other stuff, and that's happening like in the world that you can't really control, and it's really working. It's really working for you. When I play the game, one of the things that I love about it is that it's not graphically superior and modern because it it's all about the gameplay. It's all about the experience of the game. Um, your game is beautiful. I'm not saying it's not. Your game is absolutely beautiful, but it almost doesn't matter what it looks like because the focus is on the game and the simplicity of getting that right and the design of that style of game. Guys have really nailed it and brought it down to the most important elements. And when I play it, I have so much fun because it's just there's no hurdles standing in my way of playing the game, right? I don't have to go through cutscenes or massive amounts of menus. It's just right into the game and right into having fun and right into having a unique experience every time. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how you guys think about the the way you approach design and the game experience so that it's just that and there's no extra fluff or extra stuff on top it doesn't seem like there's anything that's unnecessary. It seems like you guys have identified the exact perfect things from the types of games you want to play and the game you want to make and have executed that to the highest level.
It's it's more or less really simple actually. So in our design, we're always thinking about okay, because we're players ourselves. We play still well today. Right now we don't play games at all anymore. There's like no time left to play games, but we used to play a lot of games, and it was always the thing. Okay, what is something that obstructs you from playing? And as you said, hey, there's like a cutscene. And for example, I know my brother, and he will just like spam every single button until that cutscene is over
Me too.
just just to skip it, just to get right into it. And that is what we say. Well, what we see a lot is like with okay, here we go, like really deep route, but with like cultural change and everything, how TikTok came into the world, and suddenly everyone just like has like 3 second short content. People don't
Yep.
want to wait anymore. They don't want to see like or they don't want to go in a game and it will tell you like this, and you get like pop up after pop up, and like you don't even know what is a game anymore and what is just some news or they want to get you to buy something. And that is there's reasons why people do it. We do it ourselves with like update notes, so we just have everyone that joins the game, everyone knows what we are up to. But that is just obstructing a person. Then going into the game is like, hey, what is your best play experience? What are the people we will serve the game now to? As a developer, we're always serving a game to someone. That is kind of how a business works. So you shouldn't be always you shouldn't stand above your players. You should stand below your players and work towards them because they are the people that keep you alive. They keep the lights on. So they should be as like in every restaurant, they should be the kings, the customers, the king. So what do they want? Who are they, basically? It's in our case, it's mostly like now the 20 to 30-year-olds that used to play Battlefield that maybe don't like the newest parts. I can't talk about it because I didn't play myself, otherwise I would give my own opinion about it. But they just want to have a game. They just jump in because I know the struggle. We go to work, you come home, you eat, you maybe have to do something, pick groceries, whatever, and then like you have 1 hour left, and your 1 hour of having time left shouldn't be obstructed by like 30 minutes of cutscene.
Don't
Then
forget
you
the
can
update.
just go out and watch YouTube videos. Yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
thing. You just sit in front of your desk. So that is like, hey, how can we shape that process as easy as possible for anyone that ever joins our game to just get right into it? And we made it like a one-click policy. It shouldn't take more than one click. Maybe two, depending on what you're doing, but one click. And for us, it just,
I think I counted 3, but I was so happy that it was 3.
yeah, it's like usually now it's 10 or 11 or whatever it is. Because like you have to scroll down and click and click and click. This thing right now, if you launch a game right now, you just press. Well, if you count Steam in, you press play on Steam. Then you get the game. There's like that one pop-up window. You close it down and you click on find match, and it will find the best match in your region and will instantly drop you in a server. And a great thing is a small side effect is because we are on such massive servers, even 250 player servers, most likely they will have some space without servers ever feeling empty. It's like, hey, there's like 10 spaces in that server. Everyone is like on a 64s. Oh, there's like, the server's like half dead because there's not enough people in it. But 10 people in 250 is not a lot, but it's still space for 10 people. So people can just go into it. It will, in the background, we automated everything that it will always find the best server next to you in the size you want it with the best connection. And if it finds one, if it has a goal there, it will put you in a queue and it will throw you right in the server. It takes like less than a minute to get into game. And there you are already. There you can go. You just press space or click the deploy button and you go.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever. I can't ever remember waiting more than 30 seconds to get into the BattleBit game. It's
Yeah, that is.
pretty remarkable, and it's it's always full, and that's a testament to you know the great game you guys are making. I wanted to go back to something that you said. We started talking about TikTok, and the kind of um, nobody wants to wait anymore. How do you guys approach that thinking with like gameplay and level design? Does that figure into anything that you guys do at all?
We do actually. Right now we are working on getting more vehicles, more civil vehicles. There's like a bunch of vehicles standing all around the map that you can't drive. Right now we're working on possibly, well, definitely start with some of them, get them drivable. So if we have maps with big distances, we always have, if you run to objective one and you take it because no one else is there because the other teams are all busy with something else, and you want to get back now, you don't have to run back. That you can have a vehicle on objective already and just go back. New vehicles will spawn as soon as the objective is captured. There will never be no vehicles at spawn. Every time you maybe accidentally join at spawn, you have something there that gets you out of it. So people can go right into it. Deploying is like, yeah, okay, if your friendly is like in combat, you can't spawn on him, which takes away the frustration because you won't spawn him and get instantly killed because that's just frustrating. They have to be safe, so your join in as even is as enjoyable as possible because you join in and you can just get going before you get killed again, like instantly. And like basically it shapes into everything. Our key thing is like, hey, we promise you constant action. So how do we deliver constant action? And that is where the whole loophole of, okay, how can we optimize game flows, player flows, in general, our UI is by far not perfect. Nobody of us have ever like done it professionally. We're just like, hey, okay, we see people playing our game first time, and you check and they don't find like button X, Y, and Z. Okay, maybe it's a bad spot. Let's put it somewhere else. And that is actually what we did with our your UI change. It's like we just asked people to ask their friends to play the game and record their like first 30 minutes, because that is where it comes down.
Mhm.
And we then just like sit down and watch the footage and draw lines in the footage of like where their mouse goes, and like determine on where mouse go. We just put buttons, because that is like somewhat natural. Nobody of us, if we think back, ever has his mouse somewhere on the very border of his screen. Nobody ever has that. We all have the mouse somewhere in the middle. So everything important should be in the middle of your screen.
That's interesting. I don't think a lot of games that have the size of a player base that you guys have are able to design a UI like that. It's mostly done, well, this is what we know works, and let's hope for the best and do some testing. But taking that approach with your audience that's currently playing the game is a really interesting um, point of data about how you guys build and design stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I I heard from some friends that work in the industry. I heard that like it's getting more modern, that people use eye trackers
yep.
on like do QA tests and everything, which is like really crazy. It's such a good idea. Like we never thought about it, and then I looked into it, and like it's very expensive.
Yeah. It's super expensive. Do you so so when you're talking about we're talking about the vehicles and always having something to do, and being able to get to the action as quickly as possible. It sounds like, in terms of a modern attention span, in in the way you guys design your game, you're actually approaching those type of players mechanically rather than how you design a level, right? Because you're still saying it's a very big level, and to get from point A to B could take a long time without a vehicle. So it sounds like your solutions there are, like I said, mechanically based around vehicles and stuff like that, in order to um, give gamers who have, I don't want to say shorter attention span, but they're just used to being in the action more immediately. Um, so, you know, are you guys taking any of that into consideration when you design the layout of a map?
it's it's not really on the top of our minds. It's more like we think about it later down the line. When we create a map, we just create like a base layout. And for us, it's like it's all about fairness. Even though it wouldn't matter too much, yeah, because it's just a big master game. Um, it's still all about fairness. So if we create a layout, we just say, okay, there's spawn one here and spawn two here, and maybe just draw an outline what the map could roughly look at. Just do some lines, and then like say, okay, maybe an objective here, here, and here, and here, and they all have to be equally distanced between all spawns. Have them always exactly equal. If one is further up here, then the other one from the other side is then further down there. It's always equal, that from both sides you can reach your objective at the same times. And that plays a big role in like how games will even shape out. Um, and down the line, then you go like, okay, hey, these are like further away. These are very close to each other. Between these two, you probably don't need vehicle. You just make the environment around it like more interesting. If you like run through a forest, or we just create buildings or town in between, because that makes your travel, even though it's the same amount of travel, it makes it way more interesting than just like a plain field. Running through a plain field feels absolutely like empty. There's nothing. It's just boring because you see the same rock you're running towards for the next minute.
Yep.
So just make something that is interesting around that. Make the experience from getting from one to B experience like more interesting. We have a map where between 2 points there's a swamp. So you run from like a church building area through a swamp into town. And town is then the second objective. But you get a full environment change on your way there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious. Does that philosophy and the knowledge that you are applying to designing the maps for your game come from? Um, is it more from being a player and knowing what you like, or from what you've learned in the in the 7 years that you guys have been making this game?
Both, more or
Yeah.
less. So a game I absolutely loved was The Witcher 3. I think everyone here loved it for its environment. It was just incredibly beautiful as a game. Everything in that game played out extremely well. And that is somewhere where my stance is of, hey, we just like make everything like change so much that it never becomes boring. And then yeah, we have like Velasquez, who's actually our map maker. I usually just create assets for him and we run the tests together. But he usually goes from a more technical standpoint then, and we have, for example, we can create heat maps on our maps, how they played out in specific game modes. And then you have like a bunch of just the heat data of where players run and where players run, like where no one is. There's probably nothing interesting there. So then you know exactly, okay, if there's just a big black spot where nobody has ever been throughout the entire rounds, then you know there's something wrong with that space. Is it unobtainable? Can't I reach it? Can't I do that, this, and whatever? And then you can start adjusting on that. You adjust the points that players don't play on. If it's worst case, it's an objective. Nobody ever goes to that objective. So how do you make that objective more interesting?
What type of do you guys use telemetry and heat maps and stuff like that to help you understand your players and the maps and the game?
Yeah, pretty much. We just with that we integrated it only far down the line, but that really heavily helped us understand like the flow. Because like flying around in a spectator doesn't tell you anything about the flow of a map. Yeah, you see like pushing and advancing. You see some stray people running around on the borders. You'll always have them. But what exactly the map plays out through the entirety of the rounds, you don't know. So going with like a proper heat map where like every 1 minute it just makes a yellow dot on the player's location in X brightness and just does it for every one. You then like have a proper heat map and to see the flow, where have people been the most times, where have vehicles been the most times, and then you know, okay, hey, point X is never occupied. Why is point X never occupied? And then you can start going into like, how do people get from A to B?
Yep. Um, a tried and true method, but really important, especially in games, like big online multiplayer shooters. So, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you guys have faced building this game, some of the hard times, because I think, you know, I don't know if you've experienced this yet, but there's a very tried and true like game development saying that every game that ships is a miracle, right? And because there's so many just unbelievable hard times trying to get your vision, you know, to the players. Um, how have you guys struggled making this game and essentially learning game development? You know, as you're building the rocket, riding it as you're building it. Like, tell me about some of the challenges that you guys have faced making this game and how you've overcome them.
So that is a good question. Where we start, where we end with this. Internally, there's always a joke of we are going back to the dark times because everything pre-release was the dark times. The last months now have been amazing, and like in the near future we'll go back to the dark times. It is like always like this. And it's like people constantly pushing, they want to have this and this. Managing a community is nothing to underestimate. I run our community management more or less. I feel it every day by heart. Like when people constantly write you something and they push for things constantly and constantly, it's like the same questions over and over, and you explain it every day. It's like really draining. Yet it's really cool just seeing so many people actually heavily engaged with your project. So managing community is something you should never underestimate, and you should always look into. Um, if you build your project right now and you say, okay, hey, now I will do everything in the shadows, and like the day I will release my game, I will also open up to community. Don't do that. You will be overrun by it. Like
Yeah,
in the very second you press that button.
yeah, that's a hard thing to do, right?
Yeah, as especially if you're doing multiplayer games. If you build single player games, it might be hard. If you like build a Discord community or whatever, it might still be hard. But if you build multiplayer games, you will absolutely drown in the amount of work you will be getting then. It's like it's the same with us. I built an entire moderation team in the background. Uh, a lot of volunteer people that just want to help us, and we
These are
built,
people from the community.
yeah, all of them.
Yep.
And they massively helped us, and it was also learning for us, going from like maximum 80 players in a match to several thousands now. And how do you manage several thousand people if they have an issue, if they have an issue with someone in the game? And that is when we invented, or more or less created, our reporting system, the easy reporting of just pressing it. It automatically creates a ticket in the background, sends everything that we know about this user in this regard with it, so someone can check it out. And the entirety of it, of then just running events and doing this and doing that, there's so much to take into account if you do something multiplayer. So that's why I actually advise anyone that just asks me, if you're planning to make a game, do not make a multiplayer game as your first game. Absolutely do not do it.
It's psychotic.
It seems fun. It is an absolute horror to make. Every single thing will be criticized at any given time, ever. There will never be someone that says, hey, you did this really good, because that will just be overshadowed by the pure negativity of something. Even though if you did a good change, any change is always bad at the beginning. That is something you also learn. Like every change is always bad, which is ridiculous if you think about it. But that's just life. That is like the game development thing.
Yeah, I think that I think that it's hard to, like, when you're making something, nothing ever feels finished, whether it's released or finished or not. And certainly, there's always a vocal amount of fans and players who want more, and um, many of those players don't really have an understanding of what it really takes to make video games and the development process. How do you handle um, those really passionate people in your community who maybe want something that doesn't fit within the vision or scope of the game? How do you handle that kind of criticism and desire from your community?
Well, I usually go to bed and then just cry. But jokes aside, no, transparency. Just being honest. Just jumping in a call. If X amount of people say the same thing, you just like open an public call, have it at best recorded at some point, and just go like, "Hey, okay, you guys all want this, so let's actually discuss about this. Let's see where you're coming from. Let's see where we are coming from." And then go in there in the middle ground. Maybe at the end of the discussion, we think also it's a good idea and we should do it. Or maybe at the end of the discussion, you're okay, hey, what I just proposed might not be a good idea for like X amount of things in the gameplay. I actually have an example for this. People have been constantly asking for parachutes. but we specifically said no to parachutes because then just everyone could just instantly leave a helicopter at any given time, which would completely deny of ropes, the repelling feature and everything. If we add parachutes, we can just take ropes out because no one will use it anymore. So we have been there with our community saying like, hey, if we would do this, like jumping off a building would have no side effect anymore because you could just pull the parachute right before you land. Um,
Right, but
Flying helicopters wouldn't be interactive at all anymore. It would just be like someone just flying that thing from A to B and you just leave whenever you want. You're not dependent on that pilot anymore, which completely denies the whole interaction within a helicopter.
right, and the rope speaks directly to all of those things that are happening and um, the things that you want players to experience, which is, that's the puzzle of game design, right? Like the rope is actually a really critical part of the helicopter experience in your specific game. And the way you've described um, how a parachute would break the rope is a really interesting thing because that's that's a great example of the push and pull between your design and your vision of the game and the ever expanding audience that wants more and more and more. Um, and like you said, being transparent with them about those things and being very clear about the vision of the game that you guys want to present to everyone is a very tough balance. And I would imagine that it's um, more hard now based on just the sheer amount of new people that are in your community based on all the success. Like, how has that changed?
The only thing that really changes the volume. That is the only thing that changed, to be honest. Right. Well, what I can't do anymore, what I kind of miss right now is just going to public hall and actually stream a public hall because you would just get a few, like 50 viewers or something, which would still be great, which is insane to get even on Twitch. And like a few people in there with you on the Discord call, and you can like while you do weapon, you discuss with them, whatever. That is not a thing anymore because as soon as I will go public call somewhere, there will be hundreds of people, and you can't manage having hundreds of people in the same time and not have someone speak over the other. That is
Right.
just it, whenever you want to try it, you will not manage to get that right. It's just the way things are. Um,
Have you noticed um, since the community has grown so suddenly? Have you noticed things that are being asked for and requested now that weren't happening before?
for sure. Few of the things, if there's like smaller things, we can easily adjust already. There's things we do like, hey, community requested this and this thing. For example, what we had not in the game before is like on the side, displaying your squad. We just never thought of it really. And then Big Fry was it? He made a video and was like, hey, I have like this and this like quality of life recommendation. Like in game, you see your squad here in that corner. So you always know who is in your squad and what the players are on, what classes they play. And I was like, hey, that's a great idea. And the next update it was in. Like there's feedback in the community. Even I made with all the streamers that play our game, I made an more or less feedback round with them. I just all invited them in a call and was like, hey, we are not experts on this field. This is our first time. Is there anything we can make as features, as whatever, for you as a streamer to improve your time streaming? What is issues you run into? What is things you would wish the game to have like your time being a safe experience? Because kind of their job, their whole income depends on them not getting banned. And if that happens in our game, we are in a very bad situation. We could say we don't care at all, but we do care. So that's why you go in there and you talk to every single person, even even if it's just someone that bought the game, someone that refunded the game because he doesn't like it or whatever, you go there and talk to everyone. You no bias, no nothing. I still do it today. I have you should always have a second account, but I go with my second account. I join public Discord calls in our community and just like sit there and listen in with them. In the game, I can change my name to whatever. I just change my name. I just join in on one round with them to listen to their feedback, because if you're in the developer role going to ask someone, they will never give you your honest opinion.
Interesting.
There's another learning. Some do, but they are rare to find. Usually, people like they do a lot of hot air in like public chats and like they don't know what they're doing about it. And if you actually want to go into call with them and talk one to one, suddenly they become very quiet.
It's a very different. That's a very different conversation for sure. I've
Yeah.
experienced that on many different levels throughout my career. Um, Things that people will say to you in a public space versus a private space, quite different, and a very a very interesting psychological happening there when you, especially when you're talking to your players. Um, so I before I do these, I ask people on the internet, what do you want to ask the devs before I speak to people? And I got a really interesting question I want to ask you. Um, this question came from my friend Kim, who works at PlayStation. He also has a long history in games, and his question is: the game has been praised for taking a lo-fi approach to graphics, and yet there are places where it seems more effort went into graphics and effects like lighting, weather, depth of field, etc. How do they approach deciding what to keep lo-fi versus investing in something more advanced?
Form follows function. You make something work and then you make it as beautiful as possible, which is my job. So it's just that. That's what I learned, how to refine the way you do things, how to make them with the least amount of things you could use, least amount of triangles you could use, least amount of texture you could use. How do you make them the most stand out? Just for like a benchmark. Um, I don't know if anyone here is from the like if you are 3D artists or used to be a 3D artist, but my weapons barely go over 3,000 triangles, which is in low poly standards already very low.
Yep,
Like usually what I see out there,
but
low
they
poly
look damn
weapons.
good. They look
Yeah,
really good.
and that is what I learned, how to modify a triangle so much that it doesn't appear like one. How I keep everything so extremely simple that it looks great again. Because there's a lot of flexibility in what I do. With 3,000 triangles, you usually would expect like something really blocky, and we are not at a very blocky space. I go like fairly detailed with my things. I always try to be as close to reality as possible. Same with everything. If we do vehicles, right now they're a little bit stale, but they will get an update which will completely fill the like interior with like new screens and everything. And I did some small textures, and that is where you play with solid colors and textures. Where do you put texture? Where do you put solid color?
That's interesting because when I play the game, almost immediately when I start playing it, um, I don't think about how it looks at all because I'm so engaged in the actual gameplay. And if you had told me right now that there were a bunch of screens and textures inside the vehicle, I would believe you because my mind would fills it in because again, I don't say this as a negative, but the graphics are not they're not important here. You know, it's the gameplay that is having an impact on me specifically anyway. But if you had told me that those things are in the vehicles right now, I would probably say, yeah, I bet they are because my mind fills those out because I'm having such a good time playing the game where um, if you're playing more AAA games, um, like Call of Duty or Fortnite or even Battlefield, I'm naturally curious how things look, and I get distracted by, oh my god, that looks amazing, and then you get shot in the head. Um, and I feel like, you know whether by choice or by accident, in the way that you guys have arrived, um, in the way the game looks and the way you build it, there's a lot of um, stuff that I think gets filled in psychologically for players. But then you also have these real interesting moments of detail, like on the weapons. Like I notice the weapons a lot, obviously, because they're right in your face, and that's how you interact with the world. And it's a really interesting balance that you guys are striking there. And the question is interesting to me because there are places and areas and things in the game that do feel like they have more attention to detail. Um, and I think what he's asking is what's the choice? Like, where do you make the choice to do those things and spend the time in those areas? Like, what are the important things to you that you kind of always are thinking in your mind when you want to make something look better as an artist? Like, do you have a list of things that you always go to, or is it more like a discovery each time?
It's a little bit of both. So you always think about, okay, well, some of the things that look fairly bad in game, they're just leftovers from like 2017 and such. There's always these things because you'll rework it down the line somewhere. Mostly you're just spending time on adding new things. But for example, weapons, what I try to usually do is the closer it is to your face, the more detailed it gets. The further away it is, if it's the stock and it's even behind the camera, these things will usually have like less detail. They will still have as much detail that you will recognize the parts, but they will not have as much detail as like right in front of you, because that is what you see all the time in your screen.
Mhm.
That is where it matters the most. And that is pretty much the same with like everything in map assets. What in map assets does matter? It's like it's buildings. A building does matter because you will always see that building. A fence that will someone will drive through at the very beginning of the map and will be destroyed and despawns 10 seconds later and never seen again. You don't need to put a lot of effort into that because it will just be destroyed. The
Right.
entire map is destroyable. So the things that don't get destroyed, they get more attention because everything else someone will remove throughout the entire map. That that is a really simple answer, but it's just like that's all I got because that's like how it is.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is a simple answer, and it's almost common sense. But again, it takes developers their whole career to get to that place, and you guys have seemed to kind of crack the code super early on. And it's interesting, because you know you're in real time creating the future of games right now through what you're doing, and having those having those realizations and um, kind of creative and design tenets up front so early, is only a plus. And it, like, again, it shows in the game. There's a bunch of very smart development decisions going on that are really interesting. And the point you make about the barrel and versus the stock of the gun, like I said, like, that takes a while to get to have the confidence to do that as an artist or a developer, and when you're making a game. And so I'm curious how, you know I'm sure it's going to be the same as some of the other answers you've given me. It's just like, that's just what we do. It's common sense, and it's innate in you guys. And I think having those instincts to build and create and do stuff when you're modeling stuff or you're talking about, you know, the rope, or the vehicles from getting to point A to point B. These are all things that people learn over time in game development. Obviously, you guys have spent, you know, a great deal of time making this game, and it's just really interesting to me, and I know to a lot of other people who are going to be listening to this, to see that. And I think it comes down to just don't second guess yourself, and do the right kind of obvious thing, rather than um, kind of getting really lost and tied up in, you know, the stock of this gun needs to be so detailed because someone might see it, right? Like, having the freedom, as a creator, to just let go of that as you're making your game is a really huge thing. And um, a lot of professional game developers who've been making games for a really long time, like I said, it takes a while to get to that confidence level. So it's really interesting seeing you guys have it on your on your first game. Like, it's kind of wild to watch it, actually. It's really unique.
Well, game is full of these things. It's like it was even for us. It is a learning process. So we do something. The game went through multiple iterations down its line because you learn new things, and at some point you reach a point where you can't continue on the base you have built 2 years ago because it's just outdated. You can't realize some features anymore, and then we start remaking. And it's same with me in modeling. I get better with more weapons I do. Everyone gets better with more things they do. And at one point we go back and I say like, hey, this one just doesn't fit the style now anymore. So that one gets a rework.
Yeah.
That's how we do it, basically.
So when you see a platform like Roblox evolving visually, a platform that is, has so many engaged users, and over time they're evolving how it looks. Do you feel the same need to do that? Are there plans to do that, or is it still, you know, we're doing this for a a a performance reason, and also it's kind of like the core of our game? Like, do you see your guys evolving the look and style of the game visually at all in the future?
We do. Not going away from the blocky characters because the blocky characters they just fit so well into all the silliness that is there with the game.
It's so awesome. It's like, it's almost like the coolest thing married to the coolest thing, and it makes this other coolest thing. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, it definitely helps a lot in like the silliness of everything because no one really takes our game serious. Our game is not to be taken serious. Yes, it plays seriously, but like everything around is like somewhat goofy.
Yeah,
And
that's
th-
interesting. Let me interrupt you for a point. Sorry, but let's get back to the evolution part, because I do want to hear that. But that's another thing that I immediately notice and appreciate about the game is when I'm in there, like, I really can't. It's very hard to play Call of Duty and Battlefield and Fortnite anymore for me, because I'm not as good or fast as everyone who's playing it, and I don't have enough time to get good. And it's so stressful playing those games now, right? For me, anyway. And I'm just constantly paranoid and freaked out and scared, and that's part of the fun of the game. But I don't feel that when I play your game. I'm just having fun, and I don't feel oppressed or stupid or terrible. I just feel like, you know, it's easier for me to play for some reason. I think because psychologically, I just don't have all that like weight on my shoulders, and I'm just letting go and having fun with the game.
Yeah, that is where it comes down to its like more or less hardcore identity again. It's like the game was meant to be played slow, and we just casualized it down the line a little bit. We are the in between now. We get a lot of bullshit for being the in between. People just there's like reviews saying, "Hey, we have an identity crisis." No, we want to be the in between. We are the game in between. If you if you say to yourself, "Hey, like my reaction time is not that good, and I want to take a slower approach," you can go from building to building, clean out room to room. That is completely up to you. Or you just pick up a sniper, lay at the end of a map, and just lay there for the entire game. That is completely up to you. But if you want to be that fast person, you can go into the casual thing. You can change your armor because your armor affects the stats. You run faster suddenly, and then be that lunatic and just like jump around like crazy. There's room for both play styles.
Yeah,
And
and I noticed that because I am surviving to the end of the match, which which is like that rarely happens anymore. Maybe in my youth, uh, when I was a lot better and had more time, but that's a very different experience. And like honestly, I'm not used to it, so it makes me want to play even more. And I would say that initially I was interested in the game when it came out, and I followed it a little bit and was really loved the kind of David and Goliath underdog story of you guys. Like that gets me every time. I love when people disrupt the industry. And then I started playing it, and I was really enjoying it. And then when I when I when I knew I was going to be interviewing you guys, or just you today, I dove in even more, and I just like it's made me kind of fall in love with video games again in a weird way. Not that I didn't, but it's so pure and fun without all of the baggage of all these other games that I'm used to playing. That it's really just getting back to the simplicity of playing it and having a good time, and just like enjoying playing it instead of just like you know dealing with cheaters and spawning and being shot immediately, and all those things. It's like it's a fun game because of all of the ways that you guys have built it. And I would be shocked to hear someone say you have an identity crisis, because you don't have an identity crisis. You have a very unique identity. And I think that's a real interesting point for someone to make, because maybe if they're saying this game has an identity crisis, they don't actually get the game.
I don't know. I don't want to call out someone here, but I'm fully there with you. And it's like I think it's like the only time I had like a bunch of 30-year-olds dads just screaming around like boys at the beginning of a match and just screaming random things. I think you've been there too.
Yeah,
When like everyone joins like spawns on the same place and everyone just starts screaming like a maniac. And it's like that every single time.
yeah,
And I heard that a lot. And even people that now have kids that used to play like all the old Battlefield parts, they say the same too. It's like it's a game that doesn't force you to continue play to the end. If you say, "Hey, my baby or my just woke up, or my dogs are barking, and I have to go for 10 minutes in a match with 250 players," if you miss for 10 minutes, nobody cares.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm that person. I have
Yeah,
children or child, and yeah, I'm 52, and I love this game. It's super fun, and I do feel like I can put it down and walk away and come back, you know. And I've noticed definitely there is a much different vibe um, with players in this game than other games. There's a lot less negativity. It's there. It's going to be there with it, with everything. But like you know, no one's called me a terrible name. I think ever um, playing the game, and how that ties into this, I'm not really sure. Does it mean anything? I don't know. But you know, the game. a game is the sum of a bunch of different things, and how they all fit together. And maybe in my experience, people don't feel the need to be toxic in the game. It's just like it's very obvious everyone's having fun, right? And that's just it just feels good. All right, let me go back to the part about the evolving the game look. One of the things that I kind of appreciate about the game is like the reload mechanic, the fast versus the slow, and you drop the clip on the ground, and the clip's just kind of like sitting there on the ground. It doesn't look particularly um, appealing. It's just a clip on the ground, and like again, in a different type of game, it's like something like that wouldn't even be allowed, right? Like it has to look a certain way, it has to lay a certain way, right? But it's just there, and then you go pick it up again, and it's like when you're thinking about evolving the visual presentation of the game, like where does it start? Like is it the little things, or is it improving these little things and making them feel, I don't even want to use the term better because I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Is it about like, is it about micro or macro? I guess is what I'm.
Uh, it is micro of macro effect. So just making it more immersive. For example, we had a bunch more vegetation before, and if you would shoot with a tank, there was like a somewhat an air system. If you would shoot with a tank, it would shake all the bushes around it, and we cut it from the game again because it was just not performant enough. But that is like something we wanted to bring back. Like if you run through bushes, like the bushes move away, which is something you wouldn't expect from a game that looks the way it looks right now.
Definitely not.
Um, then we had like ideas of like maybe dust that we introduce actually not only like weather settings per map, dynamic weather that suddenly it starts raining on a map, which would be extremely cool. You get like wind going through, and then you make like little pixel art graphics of like newspaper flying around if you blow up a trash bag or whatever. Or in general, just have like if someone shoots with a big caliber, you see like dust go off, but in a performant way. That would be like small little things, but that would, as you say already, it looks slow poly. It's like really brought down and really simple, but it would boost the immersion crazily again. We will actually do this in the future with something really interesting I can't talk about yet, where we just boost the immersion of like it will look like extremely simple, and extremely silly, but the way this will play out, I think everyone there will have an amazing time with it because it's just something that it just brings you back to all the old games. It's essentially nothing new at all, but it's the way we do it. It will probably just like hit hard again.
So it's really about immersion, as you say, rather than an update where the game suddenly looks different.
Yeah, it's just immersion, making interiors more interesting, introducing new furniture, introducing new props on streets, making, for example, I made ambulances and fire trucks and everything. Make the environment more of an environment. Make it real, more or less.
How do you know? How do you know when to stop?
Our community will tell us.
Yeah. So it's 100% community driven. So you'll
Yes,
be creating ambulances and chairs and things inside the house until someone says that's a bit much. I think we're good. And then yeah, I'm simplifying it
yeah,
down, but like that's how it goes.
that's how it goes. I literally said the same with weapons. Like people ask me, like, how many weapons do you still want to add? I will add weapons until you tell me it's enough, because then it's enough. That's the first thing you know, because otherwise you will then start again seeing the videos like, hey, now they have like X amount of weapons and they stop now. You will never see weapons again in like whatever update. It's like, no, it's like, hey, if it's really enough, then people will tell us. And there's definitely the point where people will say, hey, okay, you have enough weapons now. There's enough things to play around in the game with.
I don't know if I've ever heard fans of a game say it's enough.
Oh, I did. I did.
Yeah. Um, so, what do you think is what you can say anyway? What is the future of BattleBit?
Um, this like just
Nothing changes. Just keep doing
nothing
it the same
changes. Just
way.
keep. It's a passion project. So why should we change something? We just continue the way we do it. We don't plan to expand the development team because we would lose the core idea of BattleBit as soon as we go like really big start corporate thing with like 40 plus people working here. It wouldn't be the same as it is right now of just us sitting here and just messing around and just trying things. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we learn something. So that identity would just be lost. The only thing that our really great release opens up to us is now we can do it full time. That
Yeah.
is what changes.
When are you guys going to stop working your jobs? Is that
Um,
like do you guys even want to?
I kind of want to and not want to. So I'm in Germany, and I will in 1 year I will get a degree for the job I do. And having a German engineering degree is maybe something you should have in your life if you can get it. Already spend 2 years into it. I was like, okay, it's another 1 year. Fuck it, I will just do this 1 year, and then I'm through with it. And after this 1 year, I can see, okay, what direction do I want to go? Do I want to continue with my engineering degree and still do a job next to my hobby of BattleBit, or do I want to go full BattleBit? And same for Velasquez. Velasquez also has his job still. He's also saying, okay, hey, I like what I do right now. I don't know why I should change it right now. So let's just see where this goes to, where this involves into. And based on that, we just do things. But apart from this, we just will stay basically true to ourselves and just do what we think is good and what we think is a good direction. And definitely talk to our community if they agree on a direction we want to go in.
I mean, it's amazing how grounded you guys are. It's really like kind of mind blowing to sit here and talk to you and just like you're so matter of fact about like that's just the way it is. It's obvious, and you know you said a bunch of stuff in this podcast conversation that is going to blow people's minds when they hear it. Like game developers, their heads are going to explode when they hear some of the stuff you're saying because I mean, everyone is probably going to be unanimously shaking their head listening to this, going, "Yeah, of course, that's how it should be." And you know, you can't guarantee the success that you've had when you make a game. You just can't. Like, at some point, like you know, I read an interview with you guys who were talking about, you know, it's all about like the game must be good, right? And there's no game developers who start out saying I want to make a bad game, right? Everyone wants to make a good game, right? And many people make good games and nobody ever sees them or plays them. So you cannot guarantee the path that you've been on and the success that you've had with the game. But it is remarkable with what's happening to you guys, how you are staying so true and grounded. It's really commendable because you have the ultimate like setup right now because you can just make the game you want and nothing changes in your life other than the game is increasingly becoming more popular. For sure, there's a ripple effect of influence that you're going to be having in the game development community. There for sure will be games that try to emulate what you guys are doing and maybe apply it to a different genre or take a different approach than you guys are taking to the same kind of large scale multiplayer battle thing. And um, it's that's just the cycle of how these things work. And it's because people are watching you and saying, oh my God, I can do this. So, like, what is your advice to someone other than don't make a multiplayer game? Because I would give the same advice. What is your advice to you know, kids just starting out. I mean, it doesn't have to be kids. Like, we live in a time where, you know, you can be 60 and say, I want to make a video game, and you can go do it, right? It's always been the case, but it's so much easier now than it's ever been because of what is readily available to people. So, you know, what are you going to say to all of the people who are inspired by what you're doing? I'm certainly inspired by it. Like, you make me want to do things differently, which is, a really cool thing. And like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I've made a lot of games, and the way you approach things and the way your team and your game approach things, it's very, again, it's so fresh and different, and it's also so obvious. But a bunch of things had to line up to get there to be in the place that you are. So what are you telling everyone that's just starting out, who is inspired by you and wants to achieve their dreams of making video games?
Well, two words. Well, maybe three. Nike, Nike, and Shia LaBeouf. Just do it. Basically, there's so many resources out there to just do it. Build community early, so you know all the pleasure and pain you will have with everything that will go on down the line. Definitely is heavily recommended from my side. It helped us massively just building community early. Creating a Discord server takes like 5 seconds. Inviting people in there takes even less. So build yourself a community. Go out there, meet people, talk to other developers. Do listen to what they say, but never listen to their advice. Because they know X thing, and they will tell you exactly how they did it and how they know it. But what really helps then, if you go after this and just like, hey, these are the key points he talked about. Why did they do it this way? And
Right.
that is where you learn. The really great people that give like really great advice, they will only hint you in the right direction. They will never tell you how they did it. And that is perfect, because then you will figure out yourself.
Like a
Um,
magician who never
yeah,
reveals how to do the trick, but encourages you to go learn it on your own.
yeah.
I talk to young game developers all the time, and the most common question I get is, how do I break in? And I essentially tell them the same thing that you said. It's like, you just have to go build something. Like, I don't think going to school is important, for video games. It can't. I don't think it can really hurt you, but it certainly doesn't. Your career doesn't hinge on it. I didn't go to school for video games. I just learned by doing. Um, but I didn't have all the things that we have today when I was starting out, and I often wonder, like, how I would be different, and how my creative output and the games that I want to make would be different. Um, but I was born at a different time. So, but I talk to a lot of young game developers today, and my advice is always the same. Like, it used to be, start in QA, because I started in QA, and I learned everything about the beginning blocks and the foundation of game development through QA, which I still think is a phenomenal way to start. But if you aren't actually building stuff on your own, and failing and learning and figuring out with all the things that are available today, that's you're going to get left behind, because everyone else is actually doing that, right? So it's like, you know, the idea of, like you said, just do it. That's rock solid, rock solid advice, and I give the same advice, and I think that the generation that exists now, that's making games, which is going to be the future of the game industry, which happens every couple of years with the kind of advancements of tools and everything. Um, you see a real different, like, the sea change is always a little different, and um, you know I'm just really it's really fascinating and interesting watching you guys do your thing, and the way that comes out in your game is inspiring. I think a lot of people are inspired by it, and you know, having the opportunity to talk to you about this today was just a really awesome thing for me. And I hope when people listen to this, they take away your very matter of fact, but purely very pure outlook on things, and simply just doing it because you've proven that staying true to yourself and listening to the people who you're making your art and your games for matters. And, you know, who knows what BattleBit is going to turn into. Do you think you'll still be doing BattleBit in 20 years?
Maybe BattleBit 2 at that point, but um,
See,
maybe
I would say don't make that mistake. Never make a two. Just keep making BattleBit.
that would actually be really interesting to see where that would end up. But there's some ideas floating around of like maybe what we could do next and everything, but it's like far in the future still. Like for the next 4, 5, 6 years, it's just BattleBit.
Are
It's
there
just
any? Oh, sorry. Are there any games besides BattleBit that you're interested in making someday? Any types or genres?
Oki would love to do a horror game, and I love city builder games.
Interesting. One last question I have for you. I know you said before, and I wouldn't expect it to be different, but in terms of you don't have really time to play games right now. But what are the kind of games that are what are the games that are in your like immediate backlog? The things that you're looking forward to playing when you have a minute to step back from the madness.
Whew, there's a few. So I finally, after many years, in the Steam summer sale, picked myself up Halo, the Master Chief's collection. I remember it playing with like 12 years old on the Xbox 360 when it just came out. It was like 2000, yeah, it was 2012, 2013, sometime that around. Definitely would love to play that again. Um, One thing I played, like usually before I go to bed, like at 15 minutes, I jump into some games once in a while. I played Terra Nil recently, which was fabulous, fun game. I'm so looking forward to Payday 3 because they also will just keep true to their identity of what they did with Payday 2, which was a phenomenal game. It
Great,
was
great
just
game. So
it
fun.
was so great. The amount of content they release over the years is mind blowing. Um, uh, it has a few like really cool games out there. I'm also looking forward to like City Skylines too, but I think at this point everyone is.
Yeah, another amazing game. I'm definitely looking forward to that myself too. Um, all right, man. It was super cool talking to you today. I wish you guys all the success in the world. You guys are doing something truly phenomenal. You're really kind of breaking new ground, and showing people what's possible with admittedly very little, at least in the beginning. And it's a real awesome thing to see happening in the world of games right now. So I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the game, and I really appreciate having had the time to talk to you today. I think people are going to really enjoy listening to what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Still very new grounds to me, not gonna lie. Still every time it's still very amazing. Just like you see someone inviting you for a podcast and everything. It's like that's like things you ever dreamed of, and you would think they will never come true.
Well,
Sometimes dreams do come true.
yeah, I mean, I would say the same for me. I've always wanted to do this. This is only the second one I've done, and I feel real fortunate to be able to do it because I get to talk to cool people like you. But I will say, you're definitely a pro at it already. Really good.
Thanks a lot.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too.